Two Bowls in a China Shop is brought to you by these great companies that are giving us money to let you listen to their stuff.
Bullshit, Kyle. We make this show. You and me. Two Bulls in a China Shop is brought to you by us.
Someone's got to pay the bills, Dan, because it's not our trading.
All right, roll them.
Download Upside and start getting cash back wherever you roll. It's like having your own hype man. Get an average of 17% cash back at restaurants.
Oh, it's dinner time.
Average of 13% on groceries.
Get those groceries.
10 cents per gallon average cash back on gas.
It's go time.
Plus, cash back at participating convenience stores too.
Stacks on stacks.
Users can earn hundreds of dollars a year, 3 times more than other apps.
Upside, show me that money.
All right, we get it. It's easy. Just sign up for the free Upside app and start getting cash back for doing you. Download the free Upside app and use promo code DOYOU10 for an extra $10 cash back on your first purchase of $10 or more. That's promo code DOYOU10 for an extra $10 on the free Upside app. Get cash back for doing you with the free app from Upside.
You are listening to an entertainment program put together by a company called Financial Ineptitude. Anything said on this show is not an endorsement or professional advice. Would you really want to tell a court of law you were suing us because you thought taking financial advice from two idiots on a podcast put out by Financial Ineptitude was a good idea? Really? Clown hat smiley face. Well, hello everybody, and welcome to the China Shop. I am your host, Kyle, and joining me this week is the energetic and enigmatic economist, Eric Mason.
Two nicest words anybody's ever said about me.
I got to get some extra alliteration in there because the economist and Eric was already there for me. Before diving into today's discussion, though, I'd just like to take a quick moment to say thank you to our sponsors and friends over at Manscaped, Trade Pro Academy, and Orderflow Labs. By now, everyone should know that Manscaped is the best in men's below-the-waist grooming, but did you know they just launched a line of beard care products? Lucky for you, we have that exclusive offer of 20% off and free worldwide shipping using promo code 2bulls at manscaped.com. As always, that is the number 2. And when it comes to institutional quality trading education, look no further than tradeproacademy.com. Our free Discord server, you'll also find instructions to take advantage of our discount with them as well. And for all you degenerates who enjoy trading futures, you'll definitely want to look into the custom tools and studies over at orderflowlabs.com. If you enjoyed today's conversation, you can learn more about today's guest by following Eric on LinkedIn, or you can check out his website, theinformaleconomist.com. Make sure we have links for all that stuff in the episode description. And lastly, be sure to reach out with your suggestions, corrections, or questions for future guests. Do that via email at 2bulls@financialineptitude.com or join our free Discord server, where a bunch of amazing people gather to share our struggles and lessons learned with other like-minded market aficionados. All those links will be put in the episode description. But now that we got all that crap out of the way, let's talk to today's guest, Eric. What's going on, man? It's been about a year since I think we chatted last.
Nothing much, Kyle. We I have a couple of fun things. Finished up grad school, started teaching, had just general chaos in my life. So that's always fun. How about you, Kyle? I've been watching you from afar from the Discord server, from your from the podcast. I haven't been able to talk to you in a while.
Yeah, it's been a lot of chaos as well. I hadn't finished my grad school yet, but we've definitely been diving headfirst into doing some more of these mini series, Learn to Trade, like trying to get some deeper dives into some fun topics. So maybe we should do a crash course on the economy.
Hey, sign me up. You won't be able to get me to shut up, and that's like I feel bad for my students half the time. They ask me a simple question. 4 hours later, I'm like, I don't even remember what the question was. What the hell's going on? Where am I?
Well, you're gonna have to explain grad school to me then. So you have students, but you're learning.
Yeah. So I finished in August. I finished my my master's degree actually at my undergrad alma mater, WVU. And then 2 weeks later, I started teaching their Econ 201 course.
Okay. Oh, wow.
Which broke the system. I was like logging in, trying to change my class, and I kept getting alerts. It was like, "Oh, you're a student. You don't have the right to access this." I was like, "No, I'm faculty now. Switch this." That IT team down there is fantastic. But I think if I ever show my face, because I teach remote, if in the state, they are going to have to try me for something, because the amount of times I emailed them, they were just not happy with it.
Well, that's actually good to know that they have safeguards in place to keep students from accessing faculty information.
Yeah.
Actually, just out of curiosity, have you run into any issues with ChatGPT? Students using that to write papers for you?
So I am a big fan of Chat GPT. I
Oh,
think that is
did
the
it help you
absolute
pass your
future.
grad course?
No, oh no. Wow, you talked to me. Do you think I'm going to let somebody else write stuff for me? I have way
No,
too much
no.
fun doing this. No, so it's funny. It's an arms race between cheating and catching cheating.
Hmm.
And what I can tell you is that all the new softwares like Packback, Turn It In, they have GPT integrated into their own platforms, so they can tell when a student is trying to cheat, but using it. But I can tell you what I do because me, I'm too hands on.
Hmm.
I'll take my questions I ask and I'll throw them to Chat GPT, and I'll be like, write an answer at a freshman level, and I'll
Oh,
read what Chat GPT does, and I'll try and compare it to what my students are doing.
uh-huh.
Yeah, I could be. Sometimes I get a little too much in the weeds. Trying to get lazy in my class can not be a fun time.
Man, I could see that being. I don't know. It seems like the easiest way is just ask the student to rephrase what they wrote.
So it's funny. Last semester they didn't have this stuff integrated in yet, and
Hmm.
I swear I caught a couple kids with it, not knowing yet, because I'd just be like, you need to narrow this down. You need to narrow down this answer. This answer is
Hmm.
too broad, and they would write on a whole new subject.
Yeah.
But as somebody who loves microeconomics and I love game theory, I respect it. I respect the effort the kids are putting in to try and get around the system.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we adapted to calculators, right?
Right?
So, I mean,
It's a future.
like, yeah. It's like, do we really need to write essays? I mean, we just need to figure out another way to prove that somebody understands the information, right?
Yeah. Hey, at the end of the day, all I care is about is the students learning. Are they learning and understanding the material?
Yes.
That's all that matters to me.
Or learning how to cheat really well. Those
They're
are
all
all
good
good skills.
I don't endorse that for everyone. If any administrators are
No,
watching
no.
this and listening to this, you guys get popular now, and I have to be careful. A year ago, I could come on here and be a
We're not.
jabroni, but now you guys, you got Manscaped and all these great companies you're advertising for, and I'm just sitting there trying to tell you not to cheat using ChatGPT.
Oh, we're not that big. I don't think you have to worry that much. Oh, you're still in the government, right?
Yes, I am still at local government level, still taxing people, still building schools.
Was that an elected position? Did you have to go through a cycle, or do you get just hired by the city?
No, so I look out. I'm just an appointment. So
Okay.
we actually in the executive branch at our level, we only have one elected official. That's the mayor. We have a strong mayor form of government, so he's the chief elected official, and he just
Hmm.
appoints you. So it works out. And I serve a 3-year term as an appointment.
Hmm.
So little job security.
Yeah. So when did that start?
2021. So I got another year before he has
Oh
to
yeah.
take me out back.
You should be good. Just keep doing a good job.
Yeah, I hope so.
Anything nice you want to say about the mayor?
Oh, yeah, no, he pays my mortgage, but no, it's weird. He's apolitical. Doesn't belong to any
Oh,
political party.
fuck. We need more of that.
Yeah, he's of all the we're a city north of 100,000. I think he's like the mayor of the largest city who doesn't belong to a political party. And
Right.
I got to tell you, especially working in quantitative fields like finance and economics and the stuff I do every day, it's amazing
Hmm.
to work for somebody who's not so obsessed with the political environment. He always says to me, he's like, Eric, pothole politics. You can't go left, you can't go right. You got to fix the pothole. He goes, people care about fixing potholes. And when you go to work, and work is about building new special needs centers, building new schools, uh, you know, building new parks, and stuff like that.
Hmm.
And you see the political environment that's in the rest of the country. You know me, I try and stay clear of politics, but I
Yeah,
think we
man. Me
all,
too.
yeah, I think we all feel kind of that angst where Americans feel like it's American versus American. But going to work, working in government, where you're like, hey, do you know what? That kid who used to ride on a bus for 2 hours to get to a special needs program can now go down the street. Yeah, you're going to feel good about that. And knowing
Yeah.
that that's our focus, as opposed to trying to have some crazy political discussion that's so beyond local government. It makes you feel good. And, it's rare to find politicians who are like that, to be honest. And it's one of the many reasons I like working for him and why he's been in office 20 years.
Yeah, I bet. All right. Well, that should seal the deal for your next term. Oh, last time we had you on, I think, was about the time when Russia was getting a little belligerent. Um, uh, it doesn't seem like much has really changed there, but we were talking about the effects that the sanctions were having. or might have on Russia, and I think you were trying to explain basically how that was how their market was so decoupled from the rest of the world, basically, right? That
Yes, exactly.
anything that happened there was not really going to have much of an effect on the rest of the world.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. So Russia is effectively a petrostate. It's a pariah petrostate. It's Iran with nuclear weapons, if we're being honest.
Right.
And the weakest currency on earth is Iran's currency, and the ruble's following that. The weakest market currency on earth is Vietnam.
Really?
Yeah, so the Vietnamese dong, but that's by design. So
Oh,
Vietnam inherently devalues their currency. Vietnam's actually like a really good economy and a really good.
yeah, that's what I thought. I mean, they got a really solid education that they're starting to put in place. I thought they were like challenging to be like the next, like, I guess, South Korea.
Yeah, no, you're 100% right. So fun fact, the city I grew up in, we're 40% Asian Americans. So some of my best friends growing up were Vietnamese.
Hmm.
And it's weird to see like a country that produces such great engineers and has a really, like growing, and as you said, I mean, you hit it right on the nose, a growing education system. People go, I've talked about this before. They go, they have the weakest currency on earth? And I go, well, they have the weakest currency on earth that's tradable. I mean, the Iranians' currency is the weakest currency on earth, but you can't trade it.
Hmm.
Venezuela's currency, the bolivar, is very, very weak. But Vietnam does that intentionally because Vietnam is actually, I would argue that Vietnam for a developing economy is very well run,
Yeah.
because what Vietnam does is that there's a trade advantage. If you are a massive exporter, a weak currency benefits you greatly.
Yes.
And I'll put it this way. So say you have a jar, all right? If you fill it with golf balls, you're going to have a lot of empty space. But if you fill it with sand, you're not going to have that much empty space. That's the trade advantage. Weak currencies, when they're exporters, get trade advantages by having smaller units.
Hmm.
That's the same reason why China devalues the yuan. But unfortunately, China can only devalue the yuan so much because it's a reserve currency held at the IMF. So as much as China tries to dilute its currency, the IMF can simply counteract that because they hold so much yuan.
Okay.
So Vietnam is this very, very weak currency, but it's intentionally done because they know they're such large net exporters.
That makes sense because the U.S. I know when the dollar is weak, like that's really good for businesses that
Yeah.
in the U.S. because we end up exporting a lot more to like Europe and other places because their purchasing power goes further.
Right, like that's a Hall of Fame example right there. Exactly,
Yeah.
it's weaker currencies are better for export trade. Countries that are very, very heavy importers, it's better to have strong currencies. And the best example of that is obviously the great up until a few months ago, the Great British Pound,
Hmm.
which used to be $1.60 to the dollar. And so Britain, obviously historically a massive net importer, wanted a stronger currency because it increased domestic buying power.
Hmm.
Unfortunately, that hasn't, with their political upheaval,
Yeah.
that's
That's
been kind of difficult to maintain.
one way to say it.
Yeah, I was trying to I have a lot of British friends, and I try not to be mean. But what we're seeing but all these things we discuss and all these things that are really good to know about, if you see, it's kind of a fun topic because if you really like economics or you like history or politics, currency is interesting.
Hmm.
But if you're like somebody who does forex day trading, it's also interesting to kind of know some of the stuff. And currency's always been one of my favorite topics to discuss. But when we move to the ruble, and we move to understanding what's happening in Russia right now from a sanction perspective and from a currency perspective, is that it's massive capital outflows. And unfortunately or fortunately, depending on kind of your long-term view of what's best for the people of the world,
Hmm.
um, the sanctions, we now know, 8 months, 10 months after last time you and I talked, that these sanctions are working. They're incredibly effective. But a part that's maybe something that we don't fully grasp yet is that this has effectively destroyed the Russian economy for all intents and purposes.
Wow.
Sometimes we call this the flower syndrome. So you go and pick a rose and you put it in a glass of water.
Hmm.
That rose is dead. That rose is dead. It still looks pretty.
Yeah.
It's still working. It still smells. But there's nothing you're ever going to be able to do to revive that rose. And that's where we're at. They are running out of money, or they've effectively, their treasury's already run out of money. They can't sustain operations. They can't. Their financial future, their capping of oil prices, the reduction in oil values has really eroded their free flowing currency in there. So when we passed all these sanctions, Europe continued to buy gas from Russia. that allowed some stable currencies to flow in. That is the water in the vase of the rose.
Right.
All right, it's going to keep it alive longer than if you throw it on the ground.
Right. Right.
But it doesn't change that it's dead. And the part of me, when I look at this, when I look at it as a labor economist, when I look at it as somebody who studies, the most temperamental part of an economy, which is the people who work in it,
Mm-hmm.
we have to talk about this thing called capitalization value. So why is the U.S. so productive? Why does the U.S. have such crazy high wages compared to the rest of the world, even developed countries? It's because for every American, there's $46,000 in capital that they use in their job. So you take how your work plus the capital you get. We call this marginal production of labor, if we want to get real technical, and that's your wage.
Mm-hmm.
If capital leaves your economy, so this is called Solow growth model. Dr. Robert Solow won a Nobel Prize in the 80s for this. It's the background for how we study economies growing or shrinking in this case. All that capital outflow. So not only do you have a weak currency people don't trust that's being propped up by the government, you now have capital leaving. People are becoming less productive, earning less money, and sanctions cause food prices, commodity prices to skyrocket. Now, you can drain your reserves. If you're the Russian treasurer, you can drain your reserves to try and keep that alive. You can pour more water into the vase, but it's dead.
Yeah.
And we're not going to be able to reverse that. I think that's something that has to be discussed in terms, honestly, personally, let's not reverse it. I don't really care. Russia doesn't innovate. They don't produce new things. The world's not any worse or better off. This isn't a country that can make intensive goods. They don't make better goods. They're not making cars. They're making ventilators. They're not making. They try to make airplanes, but they're not good airplanes.
Yeah, I would learn that lesson from Ukraine.
Yeah,
They used to be really good at that stuff, though. What happened?
yeah. So you look at the Tupolev 144, right?
Yeah.
It was like their version of the Concorde. It flew before the Concorde, but no one ever flew mail because it kept crashing.
Oh no, I'm thinking about like the MiGs and back in like the World War II when they came up with the T tank series.
Yeah, T-34s.
Yeah, I mean those were like that. That's what basically Germany copied when they made their Panzers.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and the funny thing about T-34 is that it was heavily influenced by American design because I mean we have this weird thing in like history. I love history.
Yeah, me too.
Where, we forget that the biggest benefactor of the Lend-Lease program wasn't England; it was Russia.
Oh, really?
Like even Stalin said that like they would have lost the war if it wasn't for the Lend-Lease program in the United States. So two of their best equipments was the T-34, which was based on U.S. designs. It was Russified. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to discount Russian engineers. That's not fair. But the P-63 Arakova, which was this one of the first liquid-cooled airplanes of all time, liquid-cooled like warfare airplanes, had a 37mm cannon in the front. Really was a stopgap until the Ilyushin 2, the flying tank, was built. Was able to be built. But there's a lot of. It's very very funny. There's a lot of military historians that put in the top 10 most important military vehicles during World War II was the Studebaker transportation vehicles that we'd given the Russians that actually ended up breaking. Those were what broke the siege of Leningrad because they were light enough, but they spread their weight out enough to be able to drive across a lot of the frozen lakes to get to relieve the city.
Right.
So it is one of those weird things. We talk about like the major geopolitical parties in the world. It's U.S., China, and Russia. We're three countries that never fought each other.
Right.
Isn't that weird?
Yeah. I mean, kinda, right?
Yeah, we were involved. The Americans were involved in the White Revolution in Russia.
It's a weird thing that we do. We're just like, okay, Russia's mad at Afghanistan, so let's go arm all their troops over there, and we'll send some people over there to teach them how to fight.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's even funny if you look at the history of the U.S. and China, where it's like, anytime there's been an armed conflict, we've been on the same side.
Yeah, yeah.
It's just objectively been on the same side. It's not like, we fight. Obviously, we fought proxy wars against Russia. I guess the only proxy war you could argue we ever fought against China was the Korean War. Probably the most politically interesting war of all time.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, like every time China's been invaded, we've come to China's aid.
Yeah, China's been ahead of. I mean, I was just listening to a really good podcast talking about the Japanese side of World War II, and just like, man, China has been like a punching bag for centuries.
Yeah. So let me tell you a weird fact. The weird fact of the day. So the gentleman who dropped the bomb on Nagasaki is from Quincy. We went to the same high school. Colonel Charles Sweeney. All right. The guy who dropped the bomb on Hiroshima was from Quincy, Illinois.
Oh,
So the only two people ever to drop atomic weapons in war were both from cities called Quincy, and both weren't that big of cities when they were born.
huh.
Just weird history
Yeah,
fact there.
it's very weird.
But oh yeah, do you know what's weird about Japan? Okay, so after World War II, Emperor Hirohito stayed in power until George H.W. Bush was elected.
What?
Yeah, so George H.W. Bush, who dropped bombs on Imperial Japanese naval cruisers, was elected president, and the guy he was dropping bombs against was still Emperor of Japan.
That is bizarre.
Yeah.
The story of Japan after World War II was one of the things that I think fascinates me more than anything else. Watching the way a country can completely transform itself in such a short period of time and then turn into an economic powerhouse in the region.
Yeah. Nuclear umbrella. That's what allowed them to do it. They didn't need to spend money on defense because of the United
Yeah.
States.
That's a hard thing for I think anybody to turn around and be like, okay, you won that. We'll go ahead and work with you. You just take care of us, and we'll do the rest.
It is. See, it's funny. I often wonder if Russia had. Russia didn't invade Manchuria till the day, like around the same time we dropped the bomb on Hiroshima.
Mm-hmm.
But if Russia had ever been more proactive in, the Pacific Theater, would Japan have been partitioned like Germany? And I think the answer is probably yes.
Oh, I bet.
But we don't see that. So you ended up with one effective ruler for about 10 years, plus a nuclear umbrella that's extended the last 75 years, and you end up with a country that has the highest positive view on Americans and vice versa. Like, I think it's something like 85 to 90% of Japanese people view Americans positively, and I'm pretty sure that statistics going the other way is the same way with how Americans view the Japanese. And it's like, we dropped 2 atomic weapons on this country within like a generation.
Yeah.
We're they're probably our closest ally, besides probably England or Australia.
I know. History is fascinating.
Really, I know that's completely off topic from what I discussed.
I know, but I don't care. That's what I love about talking to economists. Is you never know where the conversation is going to go.
Unfortunately.
Well, speaking of off topic, you've mentioned something about China that kind of struck me for a minute there, about them intentionally devaluing their currency as well.
Yeah.
I thought I had been seeing too where there'd been like pushes to try to get the yuan to overtake the dollar as like the world currency.
Yeah, I think every country on Earth wants their. So we're in economics we refer to the dominant global currency as the currency of privilege.
Mm-hmm.
It's the unit sum. So Germany lends money to, let's say Germany lends money to Mexico. It goes, euros to dollars, dollars to pesos, and when Mexico pays that back, it goes pesos to dollars, dollars to euros.
Mm-hmm.
So your medium of exchange is the dollar. Everybody wants to be in that position. Everybody wants to. Like, who doesn't want to be on top? Like that's the craziest thing in the world, right?
Right.
Like who doesn't want to be the political dominant? And whatever things that we've learned over the last 40 years is economic warfare is the warfare of the modern age. Major peer-to-peers don't stand toe-to-toe and fight each other. It just doesn't happen anymore, which is good. That's a good thing that we're not seeing hundreds of thousands of people dying in war every year. I'm not going to complain about that.
They're not getting shot, but I'm sure there's people starving though.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why, when we talk about globalization and the rise of a uniformed economy, rising tide lifts all boats. And, we've only had one great famine since 2000. And that was caused by that was in Yemen. It was caused by the Saudi-Yemen war, where in the 1900s, we had about 57 great famines that killed, dozens of millions of people. So
Wow.
You're 100% right. It's if we can continue to develop and, kind of push these economic reforms forward, we can save more people.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what's interesting is that when you become the dominant currency of the world, which the Brits were before we were, it comes with a lot of caveats. It comes with a lot of dangers. Now, it's in China's case is that it's political prestige. We want to be the dominant currency.
Yeah.
When you're a net exporter like China, when you're constantly exporting goods, you need to manipulate your currency. Mm-hmm. Now, if your currency is constantly being manipulated, I don't want to make manipulative sound bad. I'm saying from an economic standpoint.
Yeah, that's might not be the right term to use in that case.
Let's say strategically devalued.
Yes, that works.
You can tell I work in government.
Yep.
So when they strategically devalue the currency, they're trying to get a trade advantage, which is fine because they usually trade with much wealthier nations.
Yeah.
In the wealthiest areas of China, the average income is about 16,000. GDP per capita is about 16,000. Or in the U.S., you're talking 60 to 70,000. They're just not comparable. And if you look at the places where the goods are being produced in China, the GDP per capita is more around 9,500. In the U.S., we do have ebb and flows of GDP per capita if you look at different states, but relatively, every state's wealthy. The poorest state is still, 5 times wealthier than some of the richest parts of even parts of the EU.
Right.
So what China wants to devalue this. Now, if you want to become a dominant currency in the world, all right, your first step is you need to join. The IMF needs to label you a reserve currency. So the reserve currencies of the world are like the dollar, the pound, the euro, the yuan, the yen. That's first up. That's great. All right. So now you're one of the big boys. And I always find it funny because I was asked on a show a little while ago, they're like, what do you mean by reserve currency? And I go, okay, so you drive your boat up to the Panama Canal and they're like, hey, pay the toll. Well, those are one of the currencies you can pay the toll in.
Right.
Which is a horribly simplified example, but that's considered like what a reserve currency.
Basically like a universally accepted.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, exactly. It's
Okay.
like, you go to Dave & Buster's and you get one of those cards, you swipe it. It doesn't matter what type of money you put on the card, it's still going to make the game work.
Right.
Arcade economics, my new podcast, follow me.
Don't do it. Dave & Buster's economics, it works. I think most people can understand that.
So they, what ends up happening is China wants to dominate. They want the new red back, is what they call it.
Mm-hmm.
But you're a net exporter, and you're trying to manipulate your currency. Well, the IMF holds millions, hundreds of millions, millions of billions of dollars of their currency. So if you try and devalue your currency, if you try and flood the market, say you practice seigniorage, so you're trying to devalue the dollar of your currency, well, guess what the IMF's going to do? They're going to pull their money back out of the system, and suddenly you're now finding something with a counterweight, and that can be very problematic for countries that are trying to become a dominant player who simultaneously want to maintain the advantages of being an independent currency. But one of the big things it really comes down to is Niall Ferguson, in his book The Ascent of Money, describes money as something interesting. Trust inscribed. Do you trust the country that currency is from to be stable and to be practical, to be pragmatic?
Yeah. Since
the inception of the United States, we refuse to practice something called seigniorage. Seigniorage is when you print money to pay bills, effectively. The U.S. does not do that. It does not practice that.
Uh-huh.
That's why we have such a high national debt. Is every dollar that we pay out has to be borrowed or taxed. So our currency stays very stable over time.
Okay.
And that makes people trust our dollars.
Okay, so we do print money. We just basically have to pay it back still.
Yeah. So let's look at the Fed balance sheets. It's bled down a little bit, but during the height of the pandemic, it was $7 trillion, give or take. Now we can look at these statistics. We have monetary base, M1 supply, M2 supply. Then a kind of defunct metric we don't use in economics that much anymore, but I'm sure there's some economist listening to the show who's going to write me a very angry letter about M3. So monetary base is how much money that the Treasury essentially has printed, how many dollars have flown out there.
Okay.
And one is the money that's in people's checking accounts and cash. People have money that's existing that you could use.
Mm-hmm.
And then M2 is money that's held in mortgages and in slightly less liquid but accessible ways. And what we saw back in quantitative easing after the 2008 recession is that we saw no matter how much money you printed and how much money you put in the economy, M1 and M2 didn't respond in that much of a correlated manner. And we saw that again with the pandemic. And this really comes down to kind of a concept we have in economics called money velocity, which is how fast a dollar moves to the economy. So we have $1 in the economy. Milton Friedman was kind of the guy who pioneered this, so I want to give credit to him.
Okay.
So money velocity is really, and this is a much larger equation that deals like inflation, monetary base size, all that stuff. But basically, money velocity is how fast a dollar can move through the economy. So back when Milton Friedman wrote this, in the 70s and 80s, money wasn't that fast, right? Like credit cards were just kind of coming to exist. The idea of a debit card and ACH and a wire transfer exists.
Right.
So you got to print more money because your money need to maintain some absolute speed, right? So more money you have, the money can move slower, but you still have the effective monetary base.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense.
But now, say one of your, somebody on the show wants to get a good product from Manscaped. What are they going to do? They're going to take out their debit card or credit card, punch it in, and get 20% off and free shipping throughout the world. So that money is instantly, snap your finger, is gone.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
$1 times infinite speed is the same value as 7.5 trillion times infinite speed. So that process, you essentially have the same size effective monetary base. So no matter how much money you print, because money's moving so quickly, it doesn't really matter. There's never been a liquidity trap, and that's a Milton. Sorry, not Milton Friedman. God, definitely not Milton Friedman. Other side of the spectrum. John Maynard Keynes talked about liquidity traps. That you can have a growing economy, you can have capital resources, but if you don't have the liquidity, you don't have the monetary base, that can hurt your economy. And I'm not the biggest Keynesian in the world, though. I'm an Austrian. That's my school. That's what I believe. But I think I have a lot of respect for the Keynesian field for some of the stuff they've done in macro. But we based that on a super long-winded. But basically, because money's moving so quickly, we don't see that much inflationary effect that's caused from money printing.
Ah, that's fascinating. If you haven't heard by now, Manscaped now sells beard products. That's right, once again revolutionizing men's grooming with the brand new Beard Hedger Pro Kit. From a beard trim to a fresh shave, the technology behind the Beard Hedger Pro Kit allows you to shape your signature beard look. Now you can finally use Manscaped products to make your drapes match your carpet by going to manscaped.com and using code 2bulls for 20% off and free shipping. God damn, I was going to make that joke. Our friends over at Manscaped were kind enough to send me the Beard Hedger Pro Kit, and I gotta say, I was impressed with the quality and performance of the products. My thick, coarse beard hair has been giving me trouble with trimmers in the past, but the Beard Hedger was able to cut through the thicket without any tugging or discomfort at all. And because the trimmer has one rotary wheel with 20 length settings with only one guard, I don't have to worry about losing or breaking attachments anymore. So I've tamed my mane, and now you can too. No one likes a weird beard, so say goodbye to your stubble trouble with Manscaped's Pro Beard Kit. It all starts with that beard hedger that I mentioned. The thing's a juggernaut of fixing faces. Not only does it have the trimmer with the rotary wheel that gives you the 20 hair cutting lengths of just the one guard, it's also waterproof, so you can shave in the shower and avoid all the hair in the sink. The titanium coated T-blade is tough on hair but smooth on your face, leading to a single stroke efficiency that brings satisfaction one stroke at a time. Phrasing. The Pro Kit doesn't end there, though. They also created 4 dermatologist-tested formulations for your post-trim care. First is the beard shampoo and conditioner. Gotta remember that all your hair is different. Beard hair, as I mentioned, is more coarse and easier to damage than the hair on your head, if you have hair on your head. That's why the kit has made shampoo and conditioner specially designed to moisturize, reduce ingrown hairs, replace natural oils, and promote beard health. Next, the kit has Manscaped's Beard Oil, an essential piece for your main facial accessory. No one wants a guy whose beard is brittle and dry. The oil relieves dryness both on the beard and the skin beneath while adding a little shimmer and shine, which makes you look extra fine. Cap off the kit with the Beard Balm, a pomade that shapes, styles, moisturizes, and tames for a sculpted look to attract any fellows or dames. The Pro Beard Kit also comes with 3 free gifts: a beard brush, comb, and scissors to ensure your beard is ready to impress. So get 20% off and free shipping with code 2bulls at manscaped.com. Of course, that's the number 2. That's 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com using code 2bulls. Manscaped Beard Hedger, 1 stroke, 1 guard, 20 lengths. So then, let me think here how to phrase this next question. I was going to ask you something about Swift.
Oh.
Like, is Swift obsolete then? Or why are we still using that then? If money can move, instantaneously, why do we still have something that takes, 2 days to clear?
Yeah, okay, so this is really interesting. I like this a lot. So not that I have to like the things we talk about. You could just
I'm always worried that I'm going to ask you something that's completely out of left field. You're going to have no idea.
Oh no, I'm such a nerd, man. I love this stuff. I mean, I hope I find something. I love when I find out stuff from left field that I'm like, I have no idea about that. I'll spend the next 3 days trying to research it.
Me too.
So Swift. So why does Swift matter? Well, the reason Swift matters is that it's the same reason that the rules of a football game matter, right? Like, a football game is going to be an hour long. Well, American football is going to be an hour long, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you can change the rules, right? Like, I'm from New England, so Brady rule, right? You can't hit somebody in the knees. Now, that's actually the most controversial thing I've actually probably ever said on your podcast. That's the one that's going to get me shit.
That or overinflating your balls. Or deflating, right?
So, I love it. So what Swift does is Swift is a system of rules that everybody follows to move money from different economies, from different judicial districts. Like, there are different rules, different laws for how money has to be handled.
Okay.
So the world basically came together and said, "Hey, we're moving a lot of money, guys. We got to figure out a way that we can move this money and everybody has the same rules. But we're not going to move it nation treasury to nation treasury. That's problematic for many reasons. Let's all come up with a system. We're going to have, I think it's like 38,000 different banks do it.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's going to follow. So we can move money from different, different legal frameworks, but everybody follows the same.
So did the banks write the rules, I'm guessing?
Yeah, so how SWIFT works is that, banks write rules for everything.
It's like, we'll handle this for you guys. Don't worry. You don't need to go to the treasuries.
So there is it's based out. It's actually based out of Belgium, I believe, or Brussels. It's based out of the EU, country in the EU, and they have there's essentially a committee that comes up with these rules, and they're very, very detailed. Like, it's almost overly legislated. I mean, again, I'm an Austrian, so I'm always going to default to less regulation, but this is probably good. And they come up with these set of rules that everybody has to follow. And if you don't follow them, you're no longer part of the SWIFT system. And by shutting people off from the SWIFT system, you basically take banks can no longer move money. And then when a bank can't move money, it becomes problematic for really nuanced reasons. One, banks instantly, snap your fingers, they lose hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue they get for yearly for moving money to open markets overnight.
Mm-hmm.
So when your bank's closed, it's going to move money to a market that's open and provide intraday liquidity.
Right.
That's why the LIBOR rate is so important. Even though the LIBOR rate is completely made up, there's actually no math behind why that's the number, but we all just kind of accept it. Just so small tangent. When back in 2021, we sold a $475 million pension obligation bond. Now, it's the largest like local pension obligation bond, I think, in U.S. history. It's definitely in state history. And so I sold it on I should say my team. My team did all the work. I just sit there and signed like 37 pieces of paper. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
We get $475 million in cash, right? About $473 million in cash, once we adjust for some of the issuance costs. And we sell it on 12/14. We get the cash 12/21, but it can't be invested in the retirement fund until the 1st of January. So our strategic asset managers, awesome CFA, tons of experience, work for some really big white collar firms, just a good shit. And he's on the phone with the bank that's holding the money, having one of the funniest, I shouldn't say funny because it's a very serious topic.
Yeah.
But he's so well versed in this that it's almost like he should. I felt bad. I don't know who was on the other end of the phone, but I assume it was some like probably junior associate who's just like picked up the phone. He's so professional, so polite, but it's basically like, okay, I want LIBOR plus like 35, and he's negotiating. And I say to him afterwards, I'm like, hey, great job with that. He goes, we could earn about $700,000 in interest, but he goes, I want as much interest as I can get off this, because I know they're just moving this money to some other market
Right.
for like 7 days and getting millions of dollars. So I'm taking some of that.
Yeah.
So we ended up, when we invested it in the retirement fund, we ended up with like basically not having to pay any issuance costs because we had made such a good return.
Oh, wow.
So I said to him afterwards, I was like, good job. But that's really how these banks operate, is that they're moving, and we're only talking about $500 million.
Right.
Versus banks have holdings, excess of 100 billion. So when you remove it from SWIFT, you can't effectively move your money left and right anymore. So you're losing all that revenue. Then people can't move money into your economy. And when you're an economy that relies so heavily on not just your systems rely on money moving in from other places, but in an economic phenomenon we call remittance, which is when people who work outside your country try to send money back into the family.
Yeah.
SWIFT allows that. And by being shut off from that system, do you know what it's really like? It's like when we built the interstate highway system and you had these towns that become defunct.
Yep.
Because the highway that you go through there no longer moves through there.
Or the old railroad towns that ended up dying because the interstate shifted the traffic to something better.
Yeah. Oh, that's a way better example, because like rails are such production. I like that.
Yeah.
This is why I like talking to you.
And also that like losing access to SWIFT and not being able to move your money, that kind of also ties in with what you're saying about money velocity.
Yeah.
Now you have all this money, but it can't go anywhere. It's basically useless.
Exactly, and that's why it was a shock to me. I think I mentioned this last time we were on the show. I was on the show, and I said that it was a shock to me how aggressive. See, the U.S. was going to shut off SWIFT, no problem.
Yeah,
but it's not just the U.S.'s call. The U.S. can shut off SWIFT to its banks, which is a huge deal.
Yep.
But seeing Brussels do that, I was like, wow, okay, people actually give a shit about this. This isn't going to be Crimea or the Donbass. Like, this is like Russia's going to eat some sanctions. And I think one of the biggest flaws that happened in Russia, Russia's economy in 2014, when it invaded Crimea, was good. In 2008, when it invaded Georgia, it was doing good, and that's because there was high oil prices then.
Yeah.
And they were able to fund their military, and they were fighting an inferior opponent. Ukraine of 2014 is not Ukraine of today.
No, not at all. Actually, with you mentioned the high oil prices. I always felt like we were pumping out as much oil as we could during that time, specifically to try to target Russia's economy and hurt them by making oil cheaper.
Yeah, I mean that's definitely hugely part of it. The U.S. has some of the highest proven oil reserves and natural gas reserves,
Yeah.
and unlike virtually every country that exists on that kind of heartland axis, we don't rely on Russia for anything.
Nope.
We don't trade with Russia. This is big. I remember when this happened. This is big. Oh, how is this going to affect the U.S. oil market? It's not.
Yep.
It's not. We don't. Less than 1% of oil comes from Russia. Russia doesn't produce particularly good oil. Russia only is successful in its sale of hydrocarbons because of cheap pipelines. It doesn't produce any sort of good oil. It doesn't produce sweet crude. It's mostly sour crude it produces. The U.S. and on top of that, the world has moved so far away from traditional, oil to natural gas. What we call wet natural gas. It's natural gas that has larger polymers in it that can be used to make plastics and stuff, and also carries butane and propane in there. That we don't care. Like it's a way to. This isn't like an economic war with China or something like that. It's just, oh, okay, yeah, they're a large country, but they're an empty country. Like we're not geographically close to you. We don't really need your stuff. I mean, the last time we relied on Russia for exports was when we imported all that titanium to build the SR-71s. The CIA made a bunch of shell companies and bought a bunch of titanium.
Oh, that's hilarious! They bought the titanium to spy on them from them.
Yeah.
I think about the only thing we care about now with Russia is just access to the crab fishing grounds over by Alaska.
Right, like it is weird for how massive of a political rival they were for so many years, and how quickly they turned out to be a paper tiger.
Yeah,
and I think that's an important lesson. I always hate this discussion of the U.S. where it's like every pair, rival, whatever you want to say, we have on Earth, and they say this wonder weapon they have, wonder weapon. I sit there and go like, dude, we outspend everybody on what do you think our weapons are, man?
Yeah.
Like, what do you think? Hypersonic missiles. I'm like. That's the weirdest discussion to me. Like, I love science and stuff like that. Like, we have an intercontinental ballistic missile is a hypersonic missile. It's 3 times faster than a hypersonic missile.
The subs that I worked on, that I used to work on, I was in the military. I guess I can't confirm or deny this, but when a submarine goes out to sea, it becomes the 4th most powerful nuclear nation. Like, it's on the same level as the 4th largest nuclear nation. Like that's that capabilities that submarine has. That's one. We have 17 of those?
Yeah, just flying around all the time. And
yeah,
in the 1960s, under the late 50s, early 60s, under the X-15 program, we had piloted aircraft that were able to reach twice as fast as hypersonic missiles. Like, what do we do? Of course, the U.S. has had this technology forever. I mean, it's like when they show the Su-57, and they're like, it's the best dogfighter. It's like, first off, great.
No, the Raptor will turn circles around that.
The Raptor was developed in the 90s, like or late 80s.
That's our 5th gen, yeah, right?
It's like, what are we doing here, guys? Like it's okay to be positive. Like, we want to be so pessimistic. I don't, I hate conspiracy theories. But one of my favorite conspiracy theories is that it's the DoD that is pumping up all these like other technologies that other countries have, so they get more money.
More than likely, yeah. Yeah, exactly. You need that fear in order to keep, funneling the spending.
I'm reading, years ago when they were talking about, the Chinese anti-carrier system, going on and on. I'm like, dude, in 1975, we had an F-15 shoot down a satellite. Like, why are we not talking about this? Like, they have all these satellites.
Right.
Like, dude, we invented a plane. Like, we have a plane that could just, 50 years ago, could shoot down a satellite. It's the only time in human history, that an airplane shot down a satellite. And then I'm fully convinced the DoD is like, oh no, you need to be scared of this. Give us more money. And I'm like, cool, you get more money. I'm cool with that. I like the cool shit you make. I like my microwave. I like GPS.
I do really hope though that we don't end up obliterating every satellite in the sky, because I don't think we'd ever get off the planet again for a while until we figure out how to clean all that up.
Kessler syndrome is a little scary. I do like space.
Yes.
But it's funny because we have this is obviously a super fun discussion, but that's the cool thing about economics is that it ties into all these things because we really need to account whenever we make an economic decision, whenever there's an economic policy change, whether it's from filling a pothole to figuring out, to address trade deficits at the national level, is like it's the same rote systematic approach. And it's really just about gathering as much information as possible to be able to make these decisions. But it's super fun because we can have a discussion like this and it's all still within that weird sphere of economics where it's like, can you like if you rely solely on selling oil like Russia, and that feeds 50% of your governmental operations, do you have enough money to invest in some like crazy cruise missile program? Like probably not. Probably not.
Well, even during the Cold War, that's what bankrupted them, is trying to keep up with our spending. We just outspent them.
That's always the funny thing about like people talk about Reagan economics. So like I'm not a believer in trickle down economics because I don't think there's any evidence for it. And I'm just like,
Yep.
people act like Reagan was this like big fiscal conservative. Don't get me wrong, I love Reagan. He was who we needed for the country at the time. And it was just like, no, we just outspend them. We just no, we're gonna spend more money than you. Like
you just look at the balance sheets. Like, oh no, this would be easy.
Russia's annual budget to run the country of Russia, all right, is $200 billion.
Yeah. And then our defense spending is what, $2 trillion?
I wish it was $2 trillion.
$1 trillion?
Yeah, it's 877 billion.
Yeah. Okay.
It's like, okay, come on, man. Like, well, clearly one guy has spent more money. It's like, not only are we spending more money, we have a professional, non-conscripted army with a ton of, and all these technologies domestically produced. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
like, I get that you want the boogeyman. The boogeyman creates a narrative, but like sometimes it's not a multipolar world. Sometimes it is a unipolar world where it's like, no, the dude who's spending $1 trillion a year, who is spending 5 times more than the entire government of its near peer, quote unquote near peer.
Yeah.
Oh, you win.
Yeah.
Come on. Let's not overthink this.
So then, is China a more reasonable one or I guess rival, to use your term, or
I mean,
are they going to turn out to be a paper tiger as
yeah,
well? Because does China even innovate?
No. So this is very interesting. So to run down this rabbit hole a little bit. So there is a process called the Dutch machine. All right, and that's basically what creates really, really tiny microprocessors for chips.
Mm-hmm.
Taiwan produces about 60 to 70% of them, but China has 80%. I actually wrote my master thesis on this, and so I feel like a super nerd when I get to talk about 30 pages. I feel like I get to nerd out occasionally. So China has 80% of the rare earth metals on Earth, right?
Yes.
But it doesn't have the technology to actually make small enough microprocessors that can be used for like a missile system, for a for smart systems like an aircraft and stuff like that. They would have to rely on other countries to make those. Neither Russia doesn't have this technology either. And basically, people won't sell China this technology. So China can make you really efficiently a bunch of microwaves, but they can't make you cruise missiles. Mm-hmm. But see, China doesn't have an offensive posture. One of look if we look at like say, and it's as much as you can trust, but as much as you can trust any government. If we look at let's look at their nuclear policy, all right, their nuclear missile policy. They only have about 250, 400. That's about the estimate for nuclear warheads. I know that's his word. Say only 400.
I know,
but they actually don't even keep them linked together. So like they have ICBMs, but they store the actual nuclear device separately. They don't have a blue water fleet. Like they don't have the ability to go travel across an ocean and invade a country.
Yeah, they're not force projecting into like the Atlantic.
Well, exactly. Like they want the South China Sea. They want they obviously want. I read a great article recently. I forget where I read it, saying that China's posturing to Taiwan is because the Chinese Communist Party likes having Taiwan as always being that person to blame, because even when they were actively shelling Taiwan in the 60s, this is the weirdest thing in the world. They actually negotiated so like Monday, Wednesday, Friday, China would fire. And then Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, Taiwan would fire. And we're not going to do it. So like, there were no fatalities. It was just those guys would leave. And I'm like, yeah, are you really trying to like, quote unquote, like fight? Like,
no.
But China reached its population bulb in 2014. The population's been declining. And on top of that, they don't have a stock market. So people buy real estate. 80% of new home sales in China are second or third plus homes. It's not your primary home. And there's entire cities that are just empty because people are always going to want to invest. But when you don't have an economy, when you don't have a market, essentially like a stock market, you're going to invest in a tradable asset like real estate. The problem is that a tradable asset, like when you invest in stock markets, you're investing in the company's ability to produce, right? Like
Yeah.
that's, even though you're not giving that money directly to the company because you're buying on the secondary market, you're saying, hey, I think Tesla's gonna get better at this. I think this guy's gonna get better at this. Real estate doesn't do that unless you're using that real estate for productive purposes, like a factory or something. But just buying a condo in some rural Chinese city is not a productive mean. So
Right.
if price rises but production doesn't rise, we call that a bubble. The definition of a bubble. So they're in this bubble. I mean, every other economy on earth is increasing interest rates. China's lowering interest rates. So they have they have massive default liabilities. They built more high-speed rail than the rest of the world has combined, but they build it to areas where there's really no demand. China kind of follows this path where they continuously invest in infrastructure.
Yeah, they did that. I mean, I understand the idea of investing in infrastructure, but yeah, they did that with roads, with all the services and stuff to put that together. I think they put steel mills every 100 kilometers throughout like
Yeah,
most of the
yeah,
country,
yeah.
but they can't produce good steel. So, I mean, what's the point?
So that's the other thing. See, I think the world's a much safer, much calmer, less scary place. But I think people like narratives that make it sound scary.
Yes,
So
yes.
let me throw something out here that's kind of interesting. So like China, you hear that stat: China's poured more concrete, built more steel than the U.S. in the 1900s, which is true. But what's funny is that the U.S. is stupidly built. Like it's a joke how well our geography, natural resources, and geographic location
Yeah.
benefits us. We have everything.
Access to 2 major oceans,
Right.
2 major markets. That you can't beat that.
Yeah, and you have domestic uranium, domestic steel, domestic thing, all this stuff.
Uh-huh.
But particularly, what is problematic to China is coal production. Right? So China produces a ton of coal.
Yeah.
Germany consumes a ton of coal. I think Germany's like up to 50% coal production right now.
Oh, still really?
Yeah, because they're trying to get off Russian gas, so they're burning
Oh, yeah.
coal.
Okay. Yep.
But coal, not all coal is created equal. So in the United States, you have Eastern, you have Western coal. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Western coal is very clean burning, dry, all that stuff.
Yep.
Eastern coal is wet coal. And that coal is like anthracite coal, so like home heating fuel, like home heating coal, something like that. You can tell I went to WVU because I know way too much about coal. I should know this one.
I know more than I should too, just because of electrodes from steel mills.
Right, exactly. So
Yeah.
metallurgical coal, which is used to create steel through the Bessemer process,
Yep.
which was that's Andrew Carnegie. Yeah, it's crazy. 120 years later.
Yeah. Yeah.
China doesn't have that coal, so they have to build all that steel, they have to import it mostly from Australia and the United States. And it's like when you are reliant for your primary inputs for your economy on another nation, you're in a bad spot.
Yeah. It becomes hard to ever be a belligerent in any sort of conflict at that point.
Ironic to China's diplomatic policy, because if you follow like Chinese diplomats on Twitter, they tend to always be like, inflammatory. And I think that's part of their policy. I don't think that's I just think that's part of their strategy. For a country that has relatively, if we look over historically, hasn't been really belligerent. They haven't been a country that tries to get involved in other affairs. And in fairness, they've also went through a very, very dark period.
Right.
One of the biggest lies I've ever heard in my life is China lifted 400 million people out of poverty. And I'm like, yes, if you start from the end of Mao, if you go from what China was before the Communist Party, they haven't lifted anybody out of poverty. They put a bunch of people into poverty.
Oh, and then lifted them out.
Lifted them out. And I'm like, dude, if I crash the plane and then pull up on the yoke, that doesn't make me a good pilot. What am I doing here?
Right.
But that's the poison pill of communism. That's the poison pill of central planned economies. I look at it's funny. I look at the Soviet Union. All right, my grandparents outlived the Soviet Union.
Mm-hmm.
Like they lived longer than the Soviet Union existed. And I'm like,
oh, that's crazy to think about.
Yeah, like my grandmother died when she was 97. And I'm like, yeah, you outlived the Soviet Union by like 20 years. She outlived the Soviet Union by my age.
Yeah.
And I'm like, so that's a failed system. Why are we trying this? Stop trying this. What does China have to do? China's like, oh no, we want this. We want this communist style. So, all right, cool, okay, moving along. But we're going to make 26 areas of the country free markets. Okay, well, it's 26 areas. Oh, just the biggest ones. What? So you don't believe in communist ideology? No, we do, just not in these specific places, so we can collect the money from that to continue to do the communist ideology. It's like, if your system relies on capitalism, do what you want. You're using it's capitalism.
Oh, it's such a weird thing. And I remember, was it Malcolm Gladwell's book that he wrote about geopolitics, like just predicting like the next 100 years of the country or the world? He talked about a lot about China in there and about how it always goes through these cycles where the rich areas get too rich and the poor areas get poorer, and eventually those poor areas rise up and overthrow the rich areas. And that happens
Yeah,
it happens on cycle is like happens very frequently.
yeah. I mean, China has a fascinating history. It's just an interesting area of the world, but there is no freedom without economic freedom.
Hmm.
And I think that sometimes in the Western world we forget that. Like we're so used to having just unilateral economic freedom. I mean, there's always discussion about political freedom and stuff like that, but economic freedom in the United States, in the Western world as a whole, is unbelievable.
Well, what can you define that? Like, what do you mean by economic freedom? What is?
So, the ability to start a business, the ability to freely interact in the economy. So, for example, like I can I can get my car right now, drive to Chick-fil-A, and get a salad. Right?
Hmm.
I said salad because I have celiac disease, so I can't eat their Chick-fil-A sandwich, and I want to include that because I'm
Oh,
sure you have Southern listeners.
My wife would be wondering what that was all about.
Which just like, unhinged at me.
Chick-fil-A salad? What? Why?
That validated everything he said over the last 50 minutes.
That's the clip.
Yeah, so we can. I really hope that's the clip. I want to see a Discord channel angry at me after that. But yeah, so we can exchange freely in this economy. We can go buy whatever we want. Go
Hmm.
we can just go buy a PlayStation. If they have it, go buy a PlayStation 5. But if you look at even the concept of free economic freedom can be weird. I have a good friend, and she's a brilliant economist, and she did her PhD dissertation on inflation in the Soviet Union, and she studied that how inflation exists, whether it's in dollars, times, or whatever,
Hmm.
and people would just see a long line and stand in it in the Soviet Union because they'd be like, "Oh, that must be important." That's how they judge price.
Oh, they do that here. You that's a fun game to play. If you go find a busy street, just go stand outside of a building, like with a couple people, and then just see how many people get in line with you.
You have a fascinating definition of use of your free time. Is this like something you like? Now I want to do this.
I've read stories of people doing it. I've been wanting to try it, but I just don't have enough friends.
I'll fly out and we can get in line together.
I gotta get them to fly out here. Nobody wants to fly out to go stand in a line that we made up.
It's like the ladder theory. Like if you're holding a ladder, you can walk anywhere. Like
Yo, never heard that
so
one.
you just take a ladder and then you walk to a sporting event and you're like, oh, I gotta get in there. They'll just let you through.
Oh, that's brilliant.
So it's funny. We have a very historic building, and we have a lot of historic buildings in Quincy, and we have a library that was built by it's like the 26th most historically significant building in the United States. It's like one of the first public libraries, and I had a vendor in who was, I forget what he was doing, but he's a big history buff, and he was like, "Oh, I'd love to go like into that library." So the bottom floor of the library is always open. It's the same way it was when it was built in 1826. But upstairs has all these books from like hundreds of years ago.
I want to see
It's
that.
a blast. If you ever go in there. So I was like, dude, do you want to go up there and see it? I mean, they have like books. They have like we have an entire. It's like a massive shelf that's full of like the laws of the Commonwealth from 1710. I was like, dude, let's go up there. Let's go up there and check it out. So I walk over to the stairs, and one of the librarians, very nice woman, comes over to me and goes, "Oh, I'm sorry, you can't go upstairs." I go, "Oh, no, it's fine. No, it's fine. I work for the city." She goes, "Okay," walks away. And I walk upstairs, and the vendor's like, "What was that?" And I was like, "What? Like, do you know her?" I was like, "No." And he's like, "You could have just lied." And I was like, "No, I've noticed.
Yeah.
If you just say something with enough confidence." And I was wearing a suit.
Yeah.
No, it was fine. I was like, "Okay."
Yep. You just gotta own it.
She was like, "All right," just like casually walked away. I was like, "Well, first off, I respect her saying that. I respect her actually trying to stop it, but I wanted to be like, feel like you should have been a little more like, how do I know you like this?" Yeah, it is creepy when you go up there though. Apparently people must have been a lot shorter back then because I'm about 6'4".
Oh yeah.
So
yeah,
guardrail is like knee size, like knee height. Like, oh, I'm gonna die this time. I don't like heights.
Yeah, definitely. The nutrition levels have changed
yeah, that's a good way to put it.
since the 1800s. We're so far off topic now. I don't even remember what we're talking about.
We actually, believe it or not, we got it on China being, is China really a paper tiger? And
Oh, yeah, that's
what I have
right.
to say to that is, as somebody who does like to use the term, like, is it a paper tiger? What do you want to say? I don't think it is in the same way as like Russia. I don't think it's this, like, I think Russia's a lot of like chest pumping.
Hmm.
China and the U.S. have the world's most interesting trade arrangement. About 54% of goods we import from China, about 56% of raw material China uses gets imported from us.
Hmm.
I think they do a lot of, do I think they do a lot of espionage? Yeah. Do I think every country in the world does a lot of espionage? Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not, I don't think I don't think it's the same geopolitical threat that we saw with the Soviet Union. It's already on the
Right.
population. It already has population decline. It's never developed into a first world throughout the entire country. The absolute horror that's going on with the Uyghur people in Western China is not the hallmark of a developed country.
Mm.
Again, not that the U.S. hasn't had atrocities. I'm not trying to do whataboutisms. But I'm saying they're not hallmarks of an economy because that's the only real topic I can speak on, right? Is
Yeah.
economics.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is It's not the hallmark of something that I can see overtaking us. And seeing what the risk of default, seeing the overbuilding, seeing the use of devaluing their currency, the use of lowering interest rates in an inflationary environment, which is weird. It shows me that that's not an economy that's a threat. It shows me that, and especially how tied we are with them. It doesn't have the hallmarks to make me go, oh crap.
So
It's more as like, hey, we're married to them.
yeah, it's like they need us more as much as we need them. That I wouldn't lose any sleep over any potential conflicts.
No, that's the thing about it. It's like, are they going to invade Taiwan? Like, I don't know. I'm not a soothsayer, but what's to gain
Yeah,
there?
what's the
Like,
benefit? Yeah.
there's a benefit to thumping your chest and going, yeah, look how strong the CCP is, but there's no benefit from actually doing it. I mean,
I mean, maybe getting access to TSM semiconductor facilities.
so I have a okay, you can make fun of me on this. So I have a theory on this, and it's the boringest theory in the world. They would just move.
TSM? Oh yeah, they probably would.
Like the people who know how to do that
Yeah.
would just be like, oh, okay. Like, okay, hey, Austin, Texas, congratulations, you have the world's largest facility. I just think that's what would happen.
That or Vietnam, or they go somewhere else. Yeah.
Yeah, I end up like watch TV, like, oh, this would destroy. I'm like, no, they would just like go somewhere else and build it. Like, they're just like, this isn't like, it's not like it's an oil field where you have to be geographhaphically located.
Right.
They'd
Yeah.
just be like,
No, they already have the
okay.
technology. They know what they're
Yeah,
doing. They just go do it somewhere else.
right.
I think we covered quite a bit. I don't know that anything was market related, but I definitely had a really fun geopolitical conversation, I guess we call it. Always fun having you on, Eric. I mean, learned a ton. But I guess, fortunately, we probably do have to let you go back to doing your government job or enjoying your weekend because this is a
Either
Saturday.
one. Kyle, as always, I love being on with you guys. It's always fun to have this conversation. I know we get a little scattered, but that's the best part about it. Economics is available everywhere. That's the best part about it.
I agree. We'll make sure there's not we don't let as much time go past. In fact, actually, might be fun to grab you because we've been doing those news updates on Wednesdays. I think the Fed is supposed to be announcing the next rate hike decision.
Yeah.
And the guy I do it with normally, Eric, he's been complaining that he's not an economist, and I've been turning him into one because we keep talking about all this economic policy stuff. Maybe you want to join us for one of those.
Absolutely, anytime. I love Fed Talk.
Oh, great. Okay.
We do I've done about $2 billion in borrowing since I've taken over as CFO. So I go to market about once a quarter.
Okay.
So that is both the bane of my existence, but also something I find incredibly fascinating.
It sounds like okay. We'll put that together then for sure.
Absolutely.
All right, folks. Thanks for sticking around to the end. If you want to learn more about Eric, make sure you give him a follow on LinkedIn, or you can check out that website at theinformaleconomist.com. We'll have links for all that in the episode description. But for now, we'll say goodbye to Eric. And thank you for taking the time to chat with us. And thank you to everybody who stuck around to the end. Back soon with another exciting episode. But till then, bye.
Have a good one, everybody.
Download Upside and start getting cash back wherever you roll. It's like having your own hype man. Get an average of 17% cash back at restaurants.
Oh, it's dinner time.
Average of 13% on groceries.
Get those groceries.
10 cents per gallon average cash back on gas.
It's go time.
Plus, cash back at participating convenience stores too.
Stacks on stacks.
Users can earn hundreds of dollars a year, 3 times more than other apps.
Upside, show me that money.
All right, we get it. It's easy. Just sign up for the free Upside app and start getting cash back for doing you. Download the free Upside app and use promo code DOYOU10 for an extra $10 cash back on your first purchase of $10 or more. That's promo code DOYOU10 for an extra $10 on the free Upside app. Get cash back for doing you with the free app from Upside.
Two Bulls in a China Shop is an entertainment program, and all thoughts and opinions expressed in the show belong to the hosts and not of any company. They are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual or on any specific security or investment product. It is only intended to provide entertainment about stocks in the financial industry of trading. If you make trades based on what you hear in this show, you assume all risks for those trades.